in the grand scheme of things, it is the leader's responsibility to communicate the importance of the grander picture and how a business stays operational and fluid. And it only stays operational and fluid if there's a balance of what is the money that's coming in, what is the money that's going out, how do we balance these sheets, how do we make that work? And that's the responsibility of the owner and the person who's doing that. And that responsibility translates into jobs. It translates into keeping the practice open. It translates into that person being able to do what they love to do. And so setting the table so people can see the importance of those pieces, even though they're invisible to their day-to-day, being crucial for them to be able to do their day-to-day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode here on the Beyond the Operatory podcast, brought to you by the amazing team at Dental City. And we're going to keep this thing going. Very excited to have these conversations with Betsy Mitchell. She's done so much over her career with performance. And what we've done is we've taken some time with her to get her insights on how you as a dental practice can take your practice to the next level. You can get the best out of your team. And today's episode is, I'm excited for this one, business and strategic leadership, right? So this is not about how to prepare a really good crown,
right,
or periodontal disease. This is a little bit of a transformation, Betsy, that practice owners and dentists have had to make over the last 4 to 5 years to really shift that mindset from clinician only, many of the things that they learned in school, to be a little bit more strategic and be business minded. So
right.
That's what we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
So I think the best place to start would be talking about the real transition to go from clinician to CEO. And I will start this by saying we forget sometimes that, let's say a dental practice is doing $1.5 million a year, $2 million a year in revenue. It's a $2 million a year business,
Right.
I mean, yes, they're providing dental care, but it's a business and needs to operate like one. So talk a little bit about kind of that transition from clinician to CEO mindset.
When you're operating as a clinician, you're always thinking about what's happening with a patient or a group of patients and what's kind of the outcome in a very patient-centric way. And it's a very much more narrow viewing point than when you actually come from a CEO or a business standpoint that's saying, hey, I need to broaden my scope and look beyond the doors of my clinic and outside here, and then maybe out here, and then maybe out here. So it's a much broader scope, it's a broader viewing point, and it's a willingness to say, there are things that I don't maybe know a whole lot about, and if I don't, how can I get some help with that? There are things that maybe I need to explore a little bit more in terms of trends, in terms of what we see happening, in terms of what are going to be the insurance reimbursement issues, all of those things that come much more in that business framework. Clinicians typically will try to stay focused on their craft. This is what I do it well, and I'm really good at it. And I've got my business people over here. But when you're transferring into more of a CEO mind, you have to begin thinking, okay, my business people are here, but they only know that. I know this, and now we have to put it all together. And it can be real challenging to broaden your scope, and it can be a little bit frightening at times too, because there may be many people that are leading practices who just don't have a very broad business background, and it might be a little bit unnerving at times.
So I have had empathy for dentist practice owners for many years because I spent some time inside of a dental practice and I was helping the teams look at their production, their unscheduled treatment. And I'll never forget, I did training one day for the entire team. And at the end of my presentation where I was talking about growth and KPIs and all that stuff, one of the hygienists pulled me aside and she said, listen, she says, I just want to tell you right now, like this whole like business stuff you're talking about, I come in here for one reason, and that's to take care of patients. And when I'm working on a patient's mouth, I don't want to be thinking about numbers. I want to be thinking about them being taken care of. And I had to go back to the drawing board and for all my future presentations. And that really struck me. I'm like, okay, like it's still important that they run this like a business, but how do we communicate that to the rest of the team? And I think about the practice owner because that's in his or her mind. They're running that business. The financial performance and KPIs are important to them. So this is kind of a two-part question, is I want to have you talk a little bit about that,
Hmm.
from the CEO mindset perspective, but then how to help them get their team on board to where the team sees that as important as well.
Let me talk about the team side first,
Okay.
and then if I get off track, bring me back
Absolutely.
to it, okay?
Yep.
But from the team side first, this is a communication piece that's really essential. People often will say, why are we worrying about strategy? Why are we worrying about that? I only want to deal with my patients, right? In the grand scheme of things, it is the leader's responsibility to communicate the importance of the grander picture and how a business stays operational and fluid. And it only stays operational and fluid if there's a balance of what is the money that's coming in, what is the money that's going out, how do we balance these sheets, how do we make that work? And that's the responsibility of the owner and the person who's doing that. And that responsibility translates into jobs. It translates into keeping the practice open. It translates into that person being able to do what they love to do. And so setting the table so people can see the importance of those pieces, even though they're invisible to their day-to-day, being crucial for them to be able to do their day-to-day. So that's the communication to the team.
Yeah.
From the standpoint of the owners and the people who are setting that table, the difficult part there is they have to wear many hats. Their preferred hat is going to be the practitioner. I prefer to do that. I want to just focus on that. And that creates real difficulties when they also have to focus on the broader, bigger picture, the strategy, the things that they don't necessarily want to do, like to do, or actually maybe even feel that are that important.
Right.
So helping them recognize that these are not choices when you are running a practice.
Yeah.
They're essential. Or the practice doesn't run.
Right.
And those are really the options.
Yeah.
It's a do or die.
Yep.
And the KPIs and performance and all of those other pieces play into that. It is a little bit of a foreign language when you're a practitioner to start talking business and to start talking a business language. There are lots of opportunities for people to learn some of that, but it helps to have others that they can talk with. It helps to have people that they can consult with. It helps to have them, give them the idea that they don't have to know everything. There are people out there that can be helpful to them.
Right. So I want to finish my story because what you shared is the bridge that helped that hygienist on that particular team move forward. So what we did was I took a whiteboard and I drew on a little graph, and it was 0 to 100. 0 was poor dental health. 100 was 100% dental health, or as healthy as could be. And the visual was, I said, okay, if this bag has all of your patients in this practice and I sprinkle them on this graph, where do they all lay? Well, now all of a sudden they're like, oh, we have some patients that are at 10% dental health and some that are 80% dental health. And we simply said to them, would you all agree that your role here as the hygienist or the clinical team is to move as many of these patients from 0% dental health to 100% dental health? And of course they all were like, well, absolutely.
Yeah.
But then the practice owner came out and he said, okay, so when we do that, what's the financial results with that? And it was pretty cool to watch,
That's a great strategy.
But to your point, it was that, he needed to understand that that was a real concern for them.
Right.
And that they also needed to know that in order for them to continue to do what they needed to do, they all needed to be on the same page. And it was amazing how their approach towards KPIs changed once he was able to communicate that. So
I think
I thought I would share that story.
A wonderful
Yeah.
story.
Yeah.
And I think it really shows, it illustrates that you can have both.
Yes.
You can have an excellence in practice, and you can also have financial excellence.
Absolutely.
And they have to be talking to each other.
Sure.
Neither one stands alone. And I think that I think your illustration is a perfect illustration of that.
Yeah.
So people could actually see it.
They did. Yeah. And they
That's
felt it
cool.
too. I mean, I think they felt it was important. Okay. So now you start to kind of get into the strategic part and you're like, okay, I have one practice. I think I could have 2, or I could have 5, or I want to grow and I want to scale. So let's talk about that element, strategic business, when it comes to scaling a single practice to multi-practice or even a DSO.
It's a good question from the standpoint of, number 1, is it possible? Number 2, what would it take? Number 3, do I lose anything in the scaling? And do I gain anything? And number 4, really looking at what you do very, very well and what would it take for you to continue to do very, very well in another setting. So there are very tough questions that enterprise owners need to ask and be able to answer before they actually take that step and to prepare for it. So scaling is important from the standpoint that, you've got a beautiful practice, you have way more people than you can handle in a particular site, you want to move into another site, but you don't want to lose either your culture or your overall level of excellence to do that. That means looking at what resources do you have and who are your key leaders already? Are they transferable? Are they able to take on more? Do they have the capabilities of doing that? So that's the leadership piece of it. What are the requirements from a standpoint of other resources? And how are you going to know that you're doing okay? And the how are you going to know question is really important. That's that evaluation question. It just says, we just can't keep doing it because we have all these patients coming. We have to know that we are hitting the mark of excellence, or we're hitting the financial marks, or we're hitting those. So they need to be set up and defined and planned for in advance. And that takes some phasing. So it doesn't all happen in one phase.
Right.
You do it in phases. It takes some really looking at how will we measure our success, and it takes a real strong look at what's the leadership and transferability of what we've got here to another site.
So a lot of your work in the past has been working with teams getting to maximum level of performance. Like you have studied and researched and lived performance.
Yes.
And so when I think about this example, when I think about a single practice owner having a successful one practice and then doing all the things that you spoke about and then being able to grow to 2 to 4 to 10, whatever the case may be, the two things that come to my mind, Betsy, are succession planning and leadership development. Because as you know so well, it's one thing in that one practice. Talk about that a little bit with your experience in performance management, that once they do scale, the element of succession planning and then of course future leadership development, because you're going to need more leaders to be able to run those practices.
Right. And even in expanding an existing practice, even if you're not moving to another site, you really need to have leadership development as a piece of this, and you need to have succession planning as a piece of it. So even if you're not thinking that you're going to expand into another site, those pieces are important. The leadership development, let me speak about first. Everybody in an organization needs to be able to see that there's room for them to grow, that there's room for them to become and develop other things if they choose to do that. When you have identified that someone has the leadership potential, meaning they've got the EQ, they've got communication skills, they've got the strategy ability, they've got the ability to think abstractly. Those are key elements to leaders, and they have the biggest and most key element is the ability to inspire others. When you see that someone's got that, you want to make sure that you support that and offer opportunities for them to not only grow that, but also to interface with other leaders who they can learn from, etc. So that might be other leaders in the industry. It might be leadership opportunities with consultants, which is Dental City has done that. I have worked with multiple leaders in this company who have grown and developed and moved into much higher leadership levels, which is wonderful to see. And it might be that you determine whether that person wants to do that, because the desire is a big thing.
Right.
You know, people may have the ability but have no desire.
Right.
So those are key. Making sure that those resources are available for that leadership development. Succession planning is another piece, and it's a piece that is really key when these businesses are growing, because one person cannot continue to do it all. And the more you always say, the more this person can do, the more they get to do. And there's a lot to that, but there is a certain threshold where you have to be able to say, we have to do something else. So when we think about succession planning, we're thinking about the future. We're thinking about what are the needs going to be, and how do we make sure we have the talent for those needs. Sometimes people come from the opposite side and say, well, I have a talented person. They can do anything. That's not necessarily true, because the setting that they're going to be in And the framework within which they're going to work is going to determine how successful they're going to be. So there has to be some matching between what do we need and what's the talent that we have. How do we grow that talent to succeed into that role? And if you have people who are already in that role, are they able to mentor back to the talent that you want to grow? So it's a both and is coming from the existing talent coming backward and from new talent going forward. And that succession planning is also about timing. The timing's crucial because many businesses have reached a point where they have the aging boomers that are leaving the business, and all of a sudden they decide I'm going to be retired, and we haven't done succession planning.
Right.
That leaves businesses in a very, very bad spot. So in multi-practice areas, that needs to be looked at from all of those practice settings, not just one. And it needs to be looked at what do we need systemically as opposed to just in one site. That takes some visionary work, and it takes a dedicated amount of time with defined things that you're looking at. What do we need? What are the goals that we have? What do we see as trends out here that might be impacting what we might need to do? And how do we take the talent that we have, maximize that, and then how do we recruit for the talent that we need?
So the last thing that I want to ask you around this topic is about innovation in the practice and adding technology. But before I do that, if there's one thing that I have also admired about many sports teams in regards to succession planning, and a little bit about this.
Yes,
I don't know if people realize that you look at a coach and their assistant coaches, and then 2 years later, that assistant coach is the offensive coordinator, and then they're the head coach.
Right.
And that just doesn't happen by accident.
That's right.
So I wanted to ask you this. What have you learned about succession planning from your time, working with the Packers or what have you, that you think, you just shared a lot, but is there anything in particular? I just wanted to kind of make this last connection because I think succession planning is somewhat new to dentistry, right? As dentistry has continued to grow and some of these DSO models, but what are some things you've taken away that from specifically from that? Because I feel like sports and teams have done a pretty good job of that.
Oh, they have. And they start looking really early for talent. So it's not that you wait until you need it. One of the things that I've learned in all of the work that I've done is I'm always scouting for talent way, way, way deep into an organization or way, way, way deep into a team. Looking to see where is that person that is showing intense interest? Where is that person that seems to have, a lot of energy and is bringing something forward that is doing kind of the above and beyond sort of thing. So you're scouting for talent early. As soon as you begin to spot something, then go and start offering opportunities. And offer opportunities early that are maybe leadership opportunities that don't require a whole lot of organizational change. They might not require an authority change, but they might be like, let's do a project lead and allow this person the opportunity to show me what they can do. Then supporting that on the opposite side with, an opportunity and the support of here are the kinds of things that you need. Always looking for mentors and people that can, help pull people up into some of these places that they might not have thought that they could even go, in the sports team, you're coaching, you're scouting, you're looking back, they're scouting kids who are 13 years old,
Yeah.
and working on them all that time until they become one of these, wonderful players.
Well, I've learned about this because my father-in-law always asks me, he loves sports and college sports, and he'll just we'll be sitting somewhere, he's like, we'll see a head coach. He's like, well, who are their assistant for? I'm like, I don't know, but I know that that's a thing, right? For people that
it
know
is.
Well,
I can tell you a whole bunch of them were for Mike Holmgren.
I'm sure.
If you look back and see all the head coaches that he produced, amazing.
It is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of lessons there.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's wrap this episode. Innovation and technology in dentistry is exciting. I will share a story as someone that, sold dental handpieces to dental practice. I had many a conversation with the dentist where they would go to purchase and they would look at me and say, okay, well, first of all, I need to make sure that I get my team on board with this, because if not, if this ends up in my closet, right? The old closet in a dental practice where a dentist gets excited about a technology and they never use it or they don't get their team involved. So I think that's kind of the last thing to talk about with this when we think about strategy. because technology is exciting, but it does require a whole new element of how to like fold it into the practice, not just to use it on the patients, but to get your team on board, the training that's involved with that. There is a strategic element to that.
There is, and a lot of that is making sure that you ask the questions and ask for input from your team. Not that you're saying, here's what we're going to do. Rather than doing that, you say, these are some opportunities. What do you think? What can you imagine might be possible with this? You know, tapping into the step beyond the doing and getting into how could you see this in some other way? Is there another opportunity for us to try this? Even putting something forward to say, look, this is something we'd like to try out. Would you be willing to do a pilot for us? Would you be willing to try this on a few patients, and let's meet and talk about how that went? What worked, what didn't work? You know, that constant dialogue around innovation and always engaging people as part of the people bringing the innovation in. Because if they're in on the front end, they're going to be in on the back end.
Yeah, totally. Another great episode.
Yes.
And, you know, I think this kind of takes us to the next episode, which we're going to talk about, is that's going to be around the patient experience and community leadership.
Great.
I feel like, and I'm excited to get your insight on that next episode, because I do feel like for a lot of practices, you mentioned in one of our earlier conversations how dentistry, and I've always been saying this for a while actually, has shifted from what was a very reactive type of profession to one that has to be more proactive now, right? Us as patients back in the day, you know, a dentist would know that a patient was going to come in, they were either in pain or they know that they get their teeth cleaned twice a year. Hopefully everybody's doing that, to where now they've had to be a little bit more proactive. And I think the second element I'm excited for you to talk about in the next episode is how our experience as patients / consumers with other businesses outside of a dental practice has shaped our expectations now. So that'll be the next episode. If you liked this one, everybody, we'd love to have you subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple, would also love to have you subscribe and download so that each time we put up a new episode, it will come through on your listening device of choice. Betsy, thanks so much.
Thank you, John.
Absolutely.